Prosecution continuing to present their case against the woman accused of murdering 2 men on her Rogue River property.
Today, Susan Monica interrupted the proceedings just minutes in, and she, the attorneys, and the jury all left the courtroom.
Again, we want to warn you, some of the details you're about to hear are graphic.
Susan Monica hated other human beings. She had lived a very difficult life, and after a while, she was over it. All she wanted to do was live on her farm with her pigs and her chickens, because to Susan, her animals are kind to her. She has other things, a lot of junk, garbage, trash, just a big hoarding collection all over the farm. But you know what? This was a reflection of Susan's inner world. She was an incredibly complicated and sometimes messy individual. We are back, another week, another Sinister. It's me, BOZE, your favorite Hot Topic employee. Yeah, I just realized the other day with the green hair, I look like a Hot Topic employee. I was trying to really go for the whole Sinister thing, okay? This is our last week. The double Sinisters are coming out. We had to play some catch up. But after this, we will go back to our regularly scheduled Friday Sinisters. But friendly reminder, I post content almost every day of the week. It's just kind of separated out into different channels. If you like body cam videos, you can watch Best of Body Cam with BOZE. We have probably close to 50 or 100 body cams that you maybe have never seen before. And as you guys know, my favorite thing to break down in all of those things is human behavior. What is going on? Why do we do the things that we do? It fascinates me, and if you've been here for a while, it probably fascinates you too. So you can find all of that stuff on Best of Body Cam with BOZE, 2 videos a week there. I also have a pop culture podcast called I Got Nothing, where if you're looking for something more lighthearted, but you still want to hang out with me and the bozos, you can find me over there. And then, yeah, we post a bunch of stuff on the main channel besides Sinister. I do have a new show coming that I think you guys might really like. That's all I'm going to say for right now. It'll be on this channel. It's something I already know that you guys like. We're just putting it together a little bit more cohesively. So thank you for watching Sinister, but don't forget, we have loads and loads and loads of things across multiple channels if you like what we do here and you want to hang out more. Susan Monica was originally born Stephen Buchanan in July of 1948. Now, before she transitioned, she worked in the military for a while. She served in the Vietnam War. Specifically, she was in the Navy, and she ended up getting honorably discharged. And right after she left, she immediately transitioned, and then she also got a job in engineering. She seemed to like her job, but above all, she was really, really good at it. She was just good at understanding the inner working of things and how it all connected. And it's like it almost just came like innately to her. Engineering wasn't really what she wanted to do. I mean, like, everyone kind of falls into the trap of like, get a good job, make good money, and as long as you're making good money, you'll be happy. But listen, doesn't always work out that way. So she decides that she wants to live a life of solitude. Like, the job is not working, the people are not working. I can only imagine her experience in the Navy probably being horrific. And she decides that she just wants to get a nice little quiet farm in Oregon. And that's exactly what she does in 1991. Today's episode is sponsored by NOCD. Did you guys know that there's different types of specialized therapy? If you're dealing with severe trauma, you might benefit from something like EMDR. But if you're dealing with something like severe OCD, talk therapy is just not going to cut it. OCD is a constant circle of thoughts that just repeat and repeat and repeat. They can cause extreme stress in your day-to-day life. They can cause you extreme mental anguish. It can be really stressful for the people around you when they don't understand why things need to be a certain way or why you're having all of these just looming thoughts. Now, a lot of us might have little pockets that have OCD traits, but for people that are living in this stress and especially undiagnosed day to day, OCD is genuinely hell. Now, we're sponsored by NOCD, so they gave me a little something that might resonate with people that are diagnosed or undiagnosed. It says, have you ever had an unwanted thought really get stuck in your head? Like in a way that felt deeper than just being unsettled by it. If maybe you got caught in a spiral of endless what if scenarios, can't stop picturing disturbing mental images, or you keep questioning yourself and wondering things like, can I be capable of doing something terrible? There's organizational OCD, there's thought OCD, there's so many different types. And what's amazing to me is some people don't even realize that they are plagued by this disorder when there is help, specialized help. There's something called exposure response therapy, which is specific for OCD. If you guys have been dealing with stuff like this and you tried talk therapy and it's not working, you probably need ERP. So NOCD is on a mission to let people know about exposure response therapy and also to help them through it. Now, the cool thing is NOCD does actually take a lot of major insurance plans. So if you're interested, you can get started with a 15-minute consultation call. Just go to nocd.com, nocd.com, and you can book a free 15-minute call. Now, let me tell you about this farm because this speaks volumes to me. Something must have happened to Susan Monica because she don't want to be around anybody. She moved to a place called Wimmer, Oregon, and back in 2010, about 20 years after she bought it and when everything started happening, the population of that city was 678 people. But if you look it up now, the population of this town is 488. I mean, it's tiny, tiny. So maybe she got it because of how remote it was, or maybe the price was right, or maybe a little combination of both. But as soon as Susan does this, she starts to live the dream that she wanted, having a farm with pigs and chickens and whatever animals. The property was on undeveloped woodlands, which also leads me to believe it was probably extremely affordable. But there was a lot of work to do, and Susan could handle the bulk of it. I mean, she understood engineering, but, maintaining a full rural property with animals that is also not developed, it's a pretty big undertaking. But above all, she values her privacy. She likes being isolated. She feels safe. This is a theme that you'll kind of see coming up with Susan Monica. Now, she moves onto the farm in 1991. And you're probably wondering, how did she make money? Some people make money off of livestock or, agriculture or whatever. Well, Susan used her engineering knowledge to start a gate building company. The name of the gate company was White Queen Construction. I don't even know if I should talk about this part, but to be honest, when I first read that, I was thinking like Snow Queen, Snow Princess, but maybe it was something different. I'm not sure. But Susan Monica's business was called White Queen Construction. Take it however you want to. I just think that's really interesting. It's indicative of her personality. So she lives on the farm for quite a while before she decides to actually build a formidable house. She was living in a structure, but she decided it was time to build a house, and she needed some help. So in 2013, she hired this guy named Robert Haney to help build the house. Robert was kind of like her handyman, also a caretaker, maybe at times a friend, just somebody she could call at any point that would fix random things. But he was also a carpenter by trade. He was a laborer. So he was helping build the house, but also sometimes if there were just random little things, Susan had a lot of odd jobs around. I mean, she's running a farm. Now, here's the thing. Robert's kind of an old school guy. Pays for everything with cash. He takes money under the table. He doesn't need much money. Susan doesn't have much, but, he found work and he found a place that he can go to if he needs to. Robert has family around him, but he's a man of the woods. He liked being in the woods. It was home to him. And, maybe he and Susan kind of understood that. They enjoyed to live a life of solitude. When you're a person that's kind of like a handyman like this, like, dude, out in nature, you thrive. It's quiet. It's peaceful. You can build most things. You can survive on your own. Some people got some crazy survival skills. You throw me out in the woods, I'm gonna build a payphone and call you. You know, like I don't even know what I would do. But this is something that Susan and Robert both liked. So they struck up a deal. She would pay him partially in cash when she could, and she would also let him live part-time in the house once it was built. And so Robert is like, okay, great. Like I can go hang out with my family. I can do my thing in the woods. I can come back here and chill. Like I got, different spaces. He felt like by helping build this house, he wouldn't necessarily have ownership in it, but he would have kind of like a second home. So he's getting paid on top of it, and he agrees. But Susan and Robert didn't get along that well. There were not a lot of fights, but it is very possible that, after Susan Monica had a pretty traumatic life, she went into a life of solitude and she just hung out with her objects and her animals all day. She didn't have anybody to talk to. She just talked to the animals. And this makes so much sense to me. When people in the world have hurt you gravely and you have a pet, or maybe you get connected with animals in some type of way, there becomes an exchange that is really beneficial for an anxious person that has been treated poorly by humans. The animal will generally treat you well, kindly, compassionately, give you love. It's non-judgmental. They are not unkind to you in the way that humans are. They don't have ulterior motives. They're her pigs or her chickens. And also, they need her. Somebody can feel very, very, very safe in their relationship on a farm like this because they're away from all of the evil human beings. They just have their crew. Their animals love them. They love them. They feel needed. They feel secure. This is like a symbiotic relationship that they understand. My suspicion here is after being on the farm for a decade, being with the animals was the first time that Susan really felt accepted and understood. But the problem is when a person comes onto the farm that has a personality, has judgments, has opinions, has likes, has dislikes, has boundaries. If somebody hasn't been exposed to other humans for close to 20 years, there could be some reactions. So in December of 2013, Robert's son realizes he hasn't heard from his dad in 2 months. Robert has several children, but his son, Jesse Haney, really sounded the alarms like, hey, has anybody heard from dad? Checks in with all the siblings. No, nothing. And this is in December. They wait a little bit because, dad's a man of the woods. He might be out there, but he usually is in contact in some way, shape, or form with his kids. So on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2014, Jesse and his siblings all gather up and they drive down to Susan Monica's farm to go looking for him. And Susan answers the door very calmly, very casually, and she said Robert had quit 4 months prior and she hadn't spoken to him. If you look at the timelines, we know that Robert moved in sometime in 2013. By December, his kids hadn't heard from him for 2 months. And when they actually confronted Susan Monica, she says that he hasn't been here for 4 months. And that's December. So that leads me to believe that, let's say, whether he moved in February or June, Robert was not even on this property for 6 months. She told him, I'm going to give you cash. And when I can't give you cash, you can live in the house that you build. And then suddenly he's just gone. He was not there for very long. Now, his disappearance is very strange, but Susan seems pretty resolute and not concerned when she's talking to Jesse. She even told him, like, hey, since you guys are here, can you take his stuff? Like, his dog is here and, like, he has other stuff that's, like, just in my house. Can you grab it? So the kids have chosen not to think the worst until they get inside and they start to collect their father's things. Jesse noticed that his leather jacket was there, one that he wore quite often. His dog was still there, running around. His tools were there. His wallet was missing. And Jesse started to feel like something was going on. His father had been a handyman for many, many years, and his dad would not leave his tools around. Where would he go and how would he work? This is all he had. Jesse would later say that when he saw his father's toolkit and could not find his wallet, the hairs stood up on the back of his neck. But he didn't quite know what to do yet. But he did have a feeling that something terrible had happened to his father. And the reality of it is actually so much worse than Jesse probably ever thought it would be. So Jesse and his siblings file a missing persons report. When they went into it, they're still not pointing a finger necessarily at Susan Monica, but they are giving the police all of the information. This is the last person that saw him. They were working together. He was living there. All of his stuff is still there. But, here's what my dad's like. He kind of just does his thing in the world. We're giving you all the pieces that we can. The investigation began, and the lead on the case was a guy named Eric Henderson. The investigators realized that nobody had seen him for months, but they also couldn't really track many of his movements because, like I told you guys earlier, he mostly used cash for any of his payments. Police being able to track down somebody's credit card history it's saved so many cases. I'm sure you guys can think of dozens. It gives a lot of information on, if their identity had been stolen or if they're not really missing, or at least where they last were or where the killer last was. So the fact that he's using cash only in 2015 and doesn't use his bank account, they don't really know where to start. So of course, they're going to start with Susan Monica, the last person that saw him. Now, I gave you guys a few details of Susan Monica's farm in the beginning. It was supposed to be a happy place for her. But when the investigators pulled up, they actually felt like they were in an episode of The Twilight Zone. Verbatim. That's what they said. The farm was practically desolate. There was no firm structure on it. There were different pens for the animals. Everything was really shoddily put together. It looked like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre lot, okay? She was a hoarder. There was junk everywhere. There were piles of rotten food, rotten trash. Think about it. She is in remote Oregon. She doesn't like people. She doesn't want to leave. How does the trash leave the property? Over 20 years. Where does it go? Susan's digging holes with trash in them. She's not taking her garbage into town or doing anything like that. It's just everywhere. She's also collecting a lot of equipment and just different junk items. Very typical hoarder stuff. For hoarders, and especially in Susan's situation, a lot of times they collect objects because they will somehow attach sentimental value to it, even if it's junk to anyone else. Or sometimes they collect items for security because they think, okay, I can sell this later. Or let me grab this for now and I'll just hold on to it until I need it. And, they'll have these moments where they hold on to something that they probably didn't really need. And then years down the line, they will find some use for it and then justify it in their head. And when this happens for some people, I had a family member that was like this. It's like a big win for them. It's very exciting when the thing that they are hoarding comes to use later. Susan is a massive hoarder, massive trash collector, and animal farmer. Okay, just trying to give you a lay of the land. Imagine a Texas Chainsaw Massacre house, okay? That's basically where we're at. This episode is sponsored by ZocDoc. Look, my doctor's mad at me, okay? They're mad at me because I found them on ZocDoc a while ago, and I initially started going to him through ZocDoc, and I keep booking through ZocDoc. And they're like, hey, you can call the office to book. And I'm like, well, you don't have an online portal. I like that. I like being able to schedule my appointments online. And the best thing is for us, it's free. Yeah, you should be able to schedule your healthcare hassle-free without going through your insurance website to find the right specialist, calling, hoping they answer, trying to coordinate schedules on the phone. No, just log into ZocDoc, tap a few buttons, put your insurance in, and you can get a provider sometimes within 48 or 72 hours. hours, sometimes even same day if you're in big cities. Yes, ZocDoc is an amazing app or website that helps you find 5-star rated doctors in your area. All of the reviews are on the website, the insurances they take, scheduling information. It is just all so easy. I have been scheduling my appointments with ZocDoc for the past year. And listen, you know that ZocDoc has been a sponsor here for a minute, but I keep showing you my emails, baby. I'm booking up with ZocDoc because I don't want to call. And if you don't want to call either, try it today. Reminder, it is free. But if you can, let them know where you came from. Just go to ZocDoc.com/sinister. See, it's that easy. ZocDoc.com/sinister. It's not even a promo code. You're just helping us out saying, hey, we found you from Sinister. Because like I said, the app is completely free. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments and schedule something with ZocDoc today. So the investigators get there and honestly, they are terrified. They're like, where the fuck are we? Like, what is this? Because also remember, this town has like 500 people in it. There's no neighbors. There's nothing nearby. Like it's actually really creepy. I wouldn't be surprised if the officers weren't afraid just going up to ask her some questions. But anyways, they do. They talk to Susan, and interestingly enough, she says a lot of strange things in this conversation, but the first thing is she tells them a completely different story than she told Jesse and his siblings. She tells the police, quote, he received a concerning phone call from a family member that said she had been the victim of assault, and he was really upset about that. She said that after this happened, he started drinking and just acting very strangely, very erratically. And eventually he said, I'm going to leave. Susan, I need you to take care of my dog. I just have to go. And while she's actively telling this story, you know, it seems a little disjointed. You know how when somebody's telling a story and it doesn't feel like it flows like a story, you kind of start to question it. And also, this man is missing. And also, these kids are looking for their dad. So while Susan is telling the story, the police are kind of just looking around and they just kind of locked eyes with her pig pen. And she had these big pigs. I mean, she had all types of pigs, but she had some really big pigs. And they're just staring at them because they hadn't really seen anything like it. And completely unprompted, Susan Monica says to the police officers, those are my pigs. I'm in the process of trying to get a government grant for research with the pigs to see how they consume human bodies. Susan made this comment completely unprompted. She was never accused of hurting Robert. She was never asked about the pigs. Nothing. They just looked over at them in the pen, and she started talking about pigs eating human bodies. After this, the detectives felt like they had enough information, and it was time to leave. They take all of this back to the police station, back to the investigation, and they just can't shake that comment that Susan Monica made. It was very strange. And also, she was strange. She was off-putting to them and not convincing. The siblings kind of believed Susan Monica, but the police were like, this doesn't seem right. So they go back to her house again. This time, Susan makes another insane comment about the pigs. Yes, even more insane than before. Once again, practically unprompted, she says, I threatened to kill everybody and feed them to my pigs. But the thing is, the pigs, they would probably eat you, but it's not going to be good for them. She once again mentioned trying to get that research grant for the effect of pigs eating human bodies. But then she tells him it was just a joke. It was just a fun little moment. For the investigators, this all just seems weird and creepy until they finally get some kind of lead. See, Robert may not have used credit cards or used his bank account, but he did have an EBT card. Essentially, it's a government assistance program for food. So he actually had a physical card for this that would get reloaded every month. So they tracked down Robert's EBT account and they saw it had been used at a Walmart in December of 2013, about 30 minutes away from Susan's house. Susan was initially approached by Jesse, Robert's son, in December, and she claimed that she hadn't seen him for 4 months. So, if she hadn't seen him for 4 months, it didn't make sense to the investigators that his card would be used near her house in December, 4 months after she said she last saw him. Now, mind you, the government believes that Robert is receiving these benefits, so they are reloading his card every month. Now, I think we all know Susan Monica was the one using the card, but the investigators were actually able to confirm this when they pulled the CCTV footage from the Walmart, and there she was, shopping around and then checking out with Robert's EBT card. After they saw this footage, they came back to her property with a full warrant. When Susan was questioned again, and this time they brought up the EBT card and the footage, Susan said, "Oh, he gave me his card in case I want, food or beer." Considering the circumstance that we were in, this was already not believable, but even more so because you cannot buy beer with an EBT card. Susan probably knew this too, but it just struck them as odd she would even say it. They continue to explore the property with their warrant, and it's even worse than they thought. Even more piles of rotting garbage, food, even industrial waste. The Jackson County Sheriff, Julie Denny, said, "I would describe that property as eerie. There was a very strong odor there, a lot of decay." This unlocks another personality trait of Susan Monica. She was living in complete squalor. I mean, the property was unlivable. Over the 20 acres of land, there was debris, burned items, junk piles, animal enclosures, some occupied, some abandoned and destroyed, various structures that were unfinished. And then the investigators found what was very clearly human remains. They first found a human leg, just separated and out in a pile of rubbish. The investigators said, quote, "It was clear that this was not an animal bone. It appeared to me to be a human leg that had been severed mid-femur down to the toes." With this discovery, the police were able to arrest Susan Monica immediately. The initial interrogation was, I would have to describe it, much like Susan's home. It was messy, it was strange, it was eerie, it was riddled with bits and pieces of truth, just trampled by lies and disjointed storytelling. At first, Susan Monica tells investigators that he took his own life.
He grabbed a little pistol, and he said that, he doesn't want to go back to jail, and he decided he was going to kill himself. So he shot himself in the head.
Right there in your home?
Right there.
Of course, the investigators don't buy this. I mean, Susan is just too odd of a character, to be honest. She literally has a Texas Chainsaw Massacre style home, and this guy has been missing for months. So they push her a little bit more on the issue because the investigators really feel like these pigs are involved. Why does she keep bringing it up? And eventually, she tells them a little bit more of what happened. The story changes completely. Now, Susan says that she walked in one day and saw her pigs in a feeding frenzy. When she looked over to see what they were eating, it was him. It was Robert. She said, quote, "He was just lying in the pig pen with his guts all over the place. He was being eaten, what I believed to be alive." She said that he was moaning and moving his arm, and she couldn't stop them. So instead, she claims that she went and got her gun and she shot him to put him out of his misery. She then said in the interrogation, "I put him out of his misery. I do that for my animals, and this was the first time that I did it for a human being. And I know it was wrong, but if it were one of my pigs suffering out there, I would have done the same thing." This tells me that Susan Monica has fully decided that animals take precedent over human beings. Over the past 20 years, the animals have earned her trust more than any human ever could. When she sees a human being that she knows and has spent time with, shared drinks with, basically lived with, is being attacked by what she perceives as her babies, her first thought is, well, I should let him eat and I'll just put him out of his misery. She then claimed that she left him in the pen and then went to feed the other animals after shooting him. And then, just to double down on the thought that Susan values animal life over human life, she actually told the police when she was asked, why didn't she call? Why didn't you call when he was being eaten alive? Why didn't you call when Jesse came to your house? She said, I didn't want to call the police because I was afraid that they would shoot my pigs. She also cared so much about the animals that after they had eaten Robert alive, she went back to the pen to grab his clothes so that the pigs wouldn't eat them because she didn't want them to get sick. This is very cold. This is very dissociative. This is very, we have left society, which is exactly what she set out to do. Society had hurt her and she decided to leave. And now she had created this new world, this new set of rules. And as she operated in this set of rules, she didn't see anything wrong with it. But when you take Susan's world and her set of rules and you put it into ours, it's strange. That is also why I think that Susan lies a bit, but occasionally tells the truth, because in her world, this is fine. Humans are below animals. So when she's blatantly telling the police, well, I didn't want you to kill the pigs and I don't want them to get sick and, well, they got to eat, this all makes sense to her. So, they get most of the information they need and then they say, Susan, is there anything else that we need to know? Anything else that we might find on the property? And she said, well, yeah, you might find another body. They ask her, where will we find it on the property in this giant mess of a property? And she just straight up draws them a map with an X on it. They go to the property and that's where they find her 59-year-old handyman who had worked there a year prior. His name was Steven Delicino. This is where things get a little more interesting because they want to know, okay, well then what happened with Steven? Some investigators go out to search the property and see if they can find him, and then some continue to ask her about this. And she claims that in 2012, just the year before Robert, the new handyman, had moved in, she said that 2 of her guns had gone missing and she found them in Steve's belongings. She said that she confronted him, they got into a whole wrestling match, and she ended up shooting Steve in the back of the head. Well, now Susan Monica has admitted to shooting another man, but in the midst of a quarrel. And so obviously, it doesn't line up that she had mercy on Robert, but Steven, yeah, she just shot him. No, you're shooting people and then feeding them to the pigs. Like, you're shooting people and feeding them to the pigs, okay? She said that this initial shot did not kill Steven. In fact, it almost gave him some adrenaline, and he chased her into the barn, but she ran right in and grabbed a rifle and shot him again. I'm at the point where I just don't believe any of Susan Monica's series of events. Like, she kind of tells the truth sometimes, but it's because she believes that truth isn't harmful in her world, She then tells investigators another piece with Steven's death that doesn't match up to anything she just said. She said at one point during the struggle, Steven was down on his knees. She was above him and she picked up the rifle and she shot him in the head. This now, through her own account, sounds like he was in a submissive position. It doesn't make sense that he was shot, got back up, chased her into the barn. She runs towards her gun, but then he just drops down on his knees and she shoots him execution style. Something else happened here, right? But as you know, with Susan Monica, we get the information when we least expect it. After telling them this, she goes on to say, I do not value human life very much. My feeling is the only thing wrong with the planet is there are other people on it. If not for us, all the other animals, even dodo birds, would be here. It's not that I want to kill anyone, but I get anxious if there's someone in my way. And that's it. And there it is. The police have everything they need. But before they wrap this up, they just ask her one more time, are there any other dead bodies on the property? And Susan said, well, if I told you about the 17 others, then I'd have to spend the rest of my life in jail. On January 14th, 2014, Susan Monica is arrested and charged. She's charged with 2 counts of murder, a first-degree abuse of a corpse, and identity theft. Now, when they searched her property, they dug over 100 holes. They found Robert and Stephen's remains, men that were killed within the last year or so, but they didn't find any other bodies. So, did Susan Monica really kill over 17 people over the 2 decades that she lived on her farm and successfully feed the remains to her animals or put them in these other piles of waste? Or did she make that part up? It was confirmed that several pigs on the farm had eaten human remains, and afterwards, the pigs were euthanized. I just want to say, I'm a person, I don't know if you guys know this about me. I love pigs. I literally donate to a pig farm all the time. I love pigs and I love horses. I don't know why. It's a soft spot for me, okay? Despite all of this, Susan Monica pled not guilty to the charges, and she decided to represent herself in court. Susan was held at a women's correctional facility, but she was not able to wear wigs while she was in jail. However, before her court date, she got to actually pick out her wigs for the trial. She came done up every single day, prepared to represent herself. But the thing is, Susan seemed to not read any legal books or didn't fully grasp the knowledge of the rules of the court. Even cross-examining Eric Henderson, who was the lead investigator, she would kind of break rules during the trial, and the judge would have to say, stop, overruled, stop, you can't ask that. She didn't know any of the rules. She just kept going. She's a very bizarre person. I also noticed that it seems like Susan relishes in her murders because she likes to reenact the moment that she shot them. She did it during the interrogations, and she did it several times in court, so much so that they described her in court as being desperate to demonstrate how she shot one of her victims. So get this. While she's cross-examining the lead investigator, this is the portion of it, she was excited to say, and if I did it like this, and I did it like this, she was reenacting the murder in the courtroom excitedly in front of the victims' families. And so the judge would have to say, please do not do that. Please do not do that. But she just wanted to. She wanted to feel it. It was very, very strange. There would also be times where they would describe in detail what happened to the victims or what Susan did, and she would just be like, this is too much. This is too much. I don't want to hear anymore. Or she would just leave the courtroom. She got really upset when an anthropologist said that Robert's legs were actually chopped off with an axe, and his thigh bones showed signs of being gnawed on by an animal. So Susan told us several versions of events of how the men died. And then we get into the courtroom and they're like, well, actually his legs were chopped off with an axe. And Susan just walks out. They also said that Stephen, the first guy that she killed, that she claimed she shot in the head once and then shot execution style afterwards, they examined him and said that he had 3 or 4 gunshots to the head in the initial shot, not the rifle shot. So it was also deduced that that was not entirely how it happened. But Susan would also get upset about something else in the courtroom. She would get more upset about this than she would when they would talk about her victims. That's right. Susan couldn't bear to hear anybody bad-mouthing her pigs. When they brought up in court that the pigs ate a man alive, she said, I can't bear to watch. I can't watch this testimony. I can't do this. The medical examiner later commented on this and said there seemed to be a lack of her taking responsibility. He also took the stand and said he had to examine the bones that were found in the pig pen. He said that he had to identify Robert, the second man, through a finger, and then he had to identify Stephen by matching his bones with his brother's. That is all that was left of them. A leg, a finger, and bones. The trial has everything it needs to put Susan Monica away for life. But right before the jury goes to deliberate, Susan Monica makes one more request. One more strange little Susan Monica request. Susan asked the judge for, quote, one more chance to demonstrate how she shot Stephen. When the judge ignored her and moved on, she started waving her hands in the air and said, "I held the gun like this. I held the gun like this." All throughout the trial, Susan wants to relish in the moment of the murder. It's probably the moment that she felt power over another human, power over this species that hurt her, although she was a part of it. I believe that Susan's killings probably started with an anxious feeling of hating humans and not trusting them, and then it turned to ritualistic murder that gave her some kind of joy or release, and also she got money out of it after killing her victims. On April 21st, 2015, the jury deliberated for just 1 hour before coming back with a guilty verdict. Now, as you guys know, I'm always interested in the judge's sentencing because all through the trial, they don't really say much. They're just there to keep things flowing and keep order. But during the sentencing, they finally get to say everything that they thought during the trial after hearing all of the evidence. And normally, the sentencing from the judge can be a bit longer. It's thoughtful. It has a lot of emotion in it. But this judge was just so dumbfounded. All he said during the sentencing was, "You shot 2 people and fed them to your pigs. I don't know how else I can put it. You valued pigs more than you valued people. It may sound harsh, but you are a cold-blooded killer." Afterwards, Susan Monica was sentenced to a minimum of 50 years in prison. Now, this trial happened about 10 years ago, and as of now, 2025, Susan Monica is 76 years old, and she's held at the Coffee Creek Correctional Facility for women. It's also funny to me that the correctional facility in Oregon is called Coffee Creek. I say that because the Oregon has a reputation for having a bunch of hipsters, you know what I mean? So their jail is actually called Coffee Creek Correctional Facility. So Susan is housed there, and she's 76 years old with another 40 years to go on the books. She is not getting out in this lifetime at all. I said before, I think Susan's killings were a result of anxiety, hating human beings, trauma, and then a ritualistic murder that gave her money. So, I don't know. I leave the ball in your court. Do you think that Susan Monica only had 2 victims? Or do you think there are more people on the farm that we will never know about?